August 26, 2025, Porepunkah, Victoria. 2 shots fired, 2 cops dead. A fugitive vanishes into the wilderness. 500 elite officers deploy with military-grade technology. Thermal drones scan the terrain. Infrared helicopters pierce through fog. Dogs track every inch. The largest operation in Australian history. Millions of dollars burned daily, but the mountain swallowed him whole. No thermal signature, no footprints, no signs of life. Desmond Freeman disappeared in front of a technological army as if the earth itself had devoured him. The morning of August 26, 2025, dawned like any other in Porepunkah, a rural town of 500 inhabitants nestled in the mountains of Victoria, 320 kilometers northeast of Melbourne. The Ovens Valley stretched peacefully beneath a gray winter sky. Alpine eucalyptus trees swayed in the cold breeze descending from Mount Buffalo. The community was the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, where doors are rarely locked, where violent crime is something that happens in distant cities, never here. That characteristic tranquility was about to shatter forever. At 10:30 in the morning, 10 Victoria police officers arrived at Four Gully Farm, a remote property on Rainer Track, a dirt road that snakes through dense forests and isolated properties. They came to execute a search warrant related to child sexual offenses. The target was Desmond Christopher Freeman, 56 years old, known locally as Desi, a man who lived with his wife Amalia and 2 young children in a converted Greyhound bus, surrounded by shipping containers serving as storage and a tent functioning as an extension. The property was part of a larger compound where several people with similar anti-government beliefs lived. It was a refuge for those who rejected society's conventional structures. The prior risk assessment, a standard procedure before executing search warrants, had concluded that deploying the Special Operations Group, Victoria Police's elite tactical unit, was unnecessary. Freeman had had minor conflicts with the law, traffic convictions, bureaucratic disputes, but nothing suggesting extreme violence. It was a miscalculation that cost 2 lives. Leading the operation was Detective Leading Senior Constable Neil Thompson, 59 years old. 1 week from retirement after 38 years of impeccable service, Thompson had been specifically chosen because he had dealt with Freeman before. He had established, according to those at the station, a rapport. Thompson was from Bendigo, a veteran of Collingwood streets, former member of the Major Fraud Squad and State Crime Squad before moving northeast. His colleagues called him Tomo. He was known for his love of the outdoors, for his calm under pressure, for being the kind of officer who resolved tense situations with words before force. That morning, Thompson was leading the team toward what everyone believed would be a routine operation. Alongside him was Senior Constable Vadim de Wart-Hattart, 35 years old, Belgian-born, fluent polyglot in Spanish, French, and Flemish. De Wart had emigrated to Australia and joined Victoria Police in 2018. He had worked general duties at St. Kilda Station before transferring to the Public Order Response Team in 2023. He was on temporary assignment in Wangaratta, gaining experience in rural areas. He was the kind of rising officer with a bright future, dedicated, professional. That morning, De Wart accompanied Thompson toward a door they should never have knocked on. The 10 officers approached the bus. Freeman was inside with his wife and 2-year-old child. He refused to open the door. From inside, his voice escalated. He argued, insulted, resisted. Tension mounted. The wife, according to subsequent police reports, was uncooperative, almost aggressive in her rejection of authority. A family member began filming with a phone. 27 minutes of tension were recorded, footage that would later become key to the investigation. Freeman repeated typical sovereign citizen phrases. He didn't recognize police jurisdiction. He didn't accept the warrant's legitimacy. He considered himself a flesh and blood man, separate from the legal entity the state had created for him. The officers had no time for philosophical debates. They had a court-signed warrant. They had a job to do. Thompson made the decision to enter. He opened a bus window and slid inside, feet first. It was a standard tactical maneuver to avoid direct confrontation at the door. But inside the bus, Freeman had already made his own decision. This was the line he would never allow crossed. This was the moment he had mentally rehearsed for years. His personal apocalypse had arrived. 2 sharp shots cracked the air. The video ends there. Cut to black. Silence. Thompson fell first, mortally wounded. Devard, attempting to assist him, took the second shot. Both died on scene. A third officer, a detective whose name hasn't been publicly revealed for security reasons, took a bullet to the leg. He crawled under the bus, bleeding, unable to move, while Freeman remained armed inside. The detective stayed hidden beneath the rusted chassis for nearly an hour, waiting for backup, listening to movements, not knowing if the next shot would come for him. Freeman attempted to shoot a 4th officer, a sergeant who had arrived as backup, but his homemade shotgun, built from hardware store parts and plumbing pipes, mechanically failed. Then Freeman did what he had planned to do his entire life. He exited the bus with multiple weapons. He crossed the property, and he disappeared into the wilderness of Mount Buffalo National Park, a 31,000-hectare granite labyrinth extending skyward like a natural fortress. What followed was an unprecedented manhunt in modern Australian history. Victoria Police activated maximum crisis protocol. Within hours, hundreds of officers converged on Port Punka. Military helicopters overflew the area. Drones launched in coordinated swarms. Local schools were put on lockdown. Residents received orders to stay home. An entire town became a war zone. At the operations peak, 500 officers were on the ground. Special Operations Group tactical units, fugitive squad teams, armed crime squad, public order response team, search and rescue squad, dogs trained in human tracking, quadcopter drones equipped with high-resolution thermal cameras, helicopters with infrared systems capable of detecting body heat through fog. New Zealand teams joined in. Australian Defence Force deployed military planning specialists. It was the largest tactical deployment the country had seen in peacetime. But Freeman had vanished. Helicopters overflew day and night, sweeping terrain with infrared. Nothing. Drones flew in algorithmic search patterns, scanning every square meter. Nothing. Dogs tracked and lost the scent on rock outcrops. Nothing. Tactical teams combed through forests, caves, abandoned trails. Nothing. No thermal signatures, no footprints in the mud, no signs of camp, no verifiable sightings. Freeman had left no trace. It was as if he had stepped through a dimensional portal and disappeared from the physical plane. The reward was set at $1 million Australian dollars, the highest in Victoria state history, to facilitate an arrest. Judicial indemnity was offered to anyone providing information leading to capture, even if that person was implicated in related criminal activities. It was an unprecedented invitation. Betray Freeman and go free, but nobody talked, perhaps because they knew nothing, perhaps because Freeman hadn't trusted anyone. More than 1,850 pieces of intelligence were investigated. Anonymous calls from residents reporting sounds in the forest, supposed sightings that turned out to be hikers, conspiracy theories in internet forums suggesting Freeman had been evacuated by sovereign movement sympathizers. Every lead was followed, every rumor verified, but nothing materialized. While the world watched in astonishment, a 56-year-old man, without formal military training, without modern logistical resources, without evident support network, accomplished what seemed impossible in 2025, vanishing completely under satellite surveillance, thermal drones, tracking dogs, and the largest tactical deployment in Australian history. The enigma wasn't just how he escaped in the chaotic first hours. It was how he remained invisible weeks, months later. The question obsessed everyone. Was he alive, surviving in the bush like an animal? Or was he dead, his body frozen in a crevice that would never be discovered? Was he a survival genius or simply a corpse that hadn't been found yet? And the answer, more than 100 days later, remained a terrifying silence reverberating through Mount Buffalo's cliffs. To understand how one man could defeat a modern army, you must understand who Desmond Freeman was and what had been preparing him for this moment his entire life. This isn't the story of a lone madman. It's the story of methodical preparation spanning decades. Freeman was born as Desmond Christopher Philby in an era and place where institutions still functioned with some legitimacy. He grew up in Glen Waverley, a Melbourne eastern suburb, in the 60s and 70s. But something in the education system, or perhaps in him, didn't fit. He dropped out of school in 8th grade at 13, never finished formal education, never obtained diplomas, never participated in the conventional path of college, university, career. He moved to Wodonga in 1977, a border city between Victoria and New South Wales, and from there built a peripheral existence, almost invisible, on the margins of Australian society. Married to Amalia, he had 3 children, a 20-year-old who had already left home, and 2 under 10. Sporadic jobs, minimal contact with authorities, a life designed to leave no trace in government databases. But Freeman wasn't simply marginalized, he was a believer, a convinced adherent of the sovereign citizen movement, a conspiratorial ideology born in the United States in the 70s within far-right groups like Posse Comitatus, which held that the federal government was an illegitimate corporation that had secretly replaced the original constitutional government. According to this theory, the state enslaves people through fictitious legal identities created at birth. Sovereign citizens call this fictitious identity the straw man, whose name appears in capital letters on birth certificates, driver's licenses, and official documents. Sovereigns believe in a flesh and blood person separate from that legal entity and reject all state authority, laws, taxes, courts. It's pseudo-law mixed with conspiratorial philosophy. It's completely false, and it's completely believed by its adherents. Freeman had adopted that surname, Freeman, a common gesture in the movement, as a symbol of dissociation from the state. On social media, under accounts now deleted but preserved in screenshots by investigators, Freeman called police enemies of humanity and the new Gestapo. In 2023, he filed a Supreme Court case in Victoria against 3 driving convictions from 2020, arguing he acted in self-defense or under duress when he fled police while filming with his mobile phone. His logic was incoherent to any jurist, but internally consistent within the sovereign framework. Traffic laws didn't apply to him because he had never contractually consented to be governed by them. The court naturally rejected his appeal, but Freeman didn't see it as defeat. He saw it as confirmation of the system's corruption. His wife, Amalia, shared these beliefs. During the search warrant execution attempt, she was described by police as uncooperative, almost aggressive in her rejection. She was briefly arrested along with a 15-year-old present on the property, but both were released without charges after interrogations. Later, Amalia would make a public plea for her husband to surrender, but there's no evidence Freeman heard or considered that request. But beyond ideology, Freeman possessed something far more dangerous than conspiracy theories: real skill. Family and acquaintances described him as an obsessive prepper. A prepper is someone who prepares for future catastrophes: economic collapse, nuclear war, pandemics, natural disasters. Freeman had spent decades preparing for the end of the world as we know it. Comet, World War III, solar event, zombie pandemic, whatever. When that day arrived, he would be ready, and his plan had always been the same: take refuge in the mountains, live off the land, disconnect completely. It wasn't empty rhetoric, it was systematic training. Freeman knew Mount Buffalo like others know their own homes. He wasn't an occasional tourist, he was a frequent inhabitant. He had walked its trails for years, he had explored its caves, He had identified its water sources. He had hunted in his forests. He didn't hunt for sport, like weekend hunters with licenses and expensive gear. He hunted for survival practice. Kangaroos, wombats, birds. He cleaned prey meticulously, utilized every part of the animal. He didn't camp for pleasure, with modern tents and portable stoves. He camped as subsistence rehearsal. Friction fire, natural shelters, filtered water, rationed food, and Mount Buffalo National Park wasn't just any terrain. It wasn't an urban park with paved trails and signage. It was a natural fortress of 31,000 hectares, founded in 1898, one of Australia's oldest parks. It's a granite plateau that rises abruptly from surrounding valleys to 1,723 meters height at its highest point, known as the Horn. Explorers Hume and Havel named it in 1824 for its supposed resemblance to a reclining buffalo when viewed from the valley. But the mountain is more than a picturesque formation. Hundreds of millions of years ago, molten rock from Earth's core attempted to break through the soft sedimentary crust, but failed. It cooled slowly beneath the surface, forming enormous granite masses. Over time, wind and rain eroded the upper sediment layers, revealing the rocky landscape that exists today. The crystal structure of granite causes it to peel in layers, creating rounded shapes and deep grooves in cliff faces and boulder fields. From a distance, the landscape appears barren, extraterrestrial. From within, it's a labyrinth. During summer, indigenous Taungurung peoples ascended Mount Buffalo to hunt bogong moths, which sheltered by the thousands in granite crevices. The moths were protein-rich, a vital resource. The Taungurung knew every rock shelter, every water source, every safe route. For them, the mountain wasn't hostile, it was provider. Freeman, in his way, had adopted that same ancestral relationship with the terrain. But Mount Buffalo is also a place of death. Cliffs dropping 300 vertical meters, alpine eucalyptus forests wrapped in dense fog that can last for days, deep caves where cold accumulates like liquid, alpine weather changing without warning, sun to snowstorm in under an hour. And most crucial to Freeman's story, thousands of abandoned mining tunnels from the 19th century gold rush. Desperate prospectors had excavated the park's underground, creating subterranean labyrinths that were later sealed, forgotten, erased from official maps. Dry tunnels hidden, invisible from air, where a man could disappear for months without detection. Freeman had chosen to live at Four Gully Farm, a few kilometers from the park entrance. Not by chance, by strategy. His entire life, since dropping out of school at 13, had been a slow preparation for a confrontation he knew was inevitable. Not with a foreign invader, not with a natural disaster, but with the state itself, the entity he considered his existential enemy. And when that confrontation finally arrived in the form of 10 officers with a court warrant, Freeman executed the plan he had mentally rehearsed 1,000 times. He fired, he fled, he disappeared. The search for Freeman wasn't an ordinary operation. It was the largest tactical deployment in Australian history. But even the most sophisticated arsenal has limits that technology cannot overcome. In the first 48 hours, 400 officers combed the area. Victoria Police helicopters overflew with infrared systems capable of detecting thermal radiation emitted by objects. These systems separated heat sources from surrounding environment, making thermal signatures glow in darkness or penetrate fog. In theory, a human body at 37 degrees should stand out like a white beacon against the mountain's cold. But Mount Buffalo isn't flat desert. It's granite, living rock that retains and reflects heat during the day and releases it at night, creating false thermal signatures in every crack and outcrop. Deployed drones were DJI quadcopters equipped with FLIR cameras, high-resolution thermal imaging technology used in military missions. They flew in grid patterns, sweeping square kilometers of rugged terrain. But drones have limitations. They cannot penetrate caves. They cannot see under dense eucalyptus canopies, and they cannot operate in extreme wind conditions, which at Mount Buffalo regularly exceed 60 kilometers per hour. On the ground, tactical teams from the Special Operations Group, Public Order Response Team, and Armed Crime Squad advanced in methodical formations. Line searches where officers marched shoulder to shoulder in spirals, moving toward a central point. But each officer had to carry supplies for days in hostile terrain, 20-kilo backpacks on 45-degree slopes, accumulated fatigue, personnel rotation from New Zealand and other Australian states to keep the operation running without collapsing from exhaustion. Search and rescue dogs were deployed, including cadaver dogs from New South Wales, trained to detect the scent of decomposing human remains. But Freeman knew a trick that Malcolm Naden, the fugitive who eluded police for 7 years in New South Wales, had perfected, remaining in the bush so long that dogs lost his scent. Human odor dilutes, mixes with environment, becomes indistinguishable from the forest itself. A no-fly zone was established over the region. Mount Buffalo National Park was closed to the public for weeks. Bearcat armored vehicles, resistant to bullets and blasts, were deployed for raids in remote areas. Australian Army contributed military planning specialists and aerial surveillance assets. The operation cost millions per day. But there was a fundamental problem no technology could solve. Freeman wasn't trying to move. He was trying to disappear, and Mount Buffalo offered perfect refuges, the mining tunnels. Locals familiar with the area confirmed finding improvised beds in tunnels before. One of them, Darby Lee, explained to The Guardian, "It's dry, it's warm, and it might look a bit gnarly, but it'll keep you out of trouble." The granite caves, rock shelters, places where visual presence to the sky was nil, where drones passed overhead detecting nothing. Police reviewed more than 1,950 pieces of intelligence, anonymous calls, supposed sightings, suspicious movements on private properties. Nothing materialized. Victoria Police Commissioner Mike Bush publicly admitted they were open to all scenarios regarding Freeman's whereabouts. Alive, dead, escaped, hidden. Each passing day without results eroded confidence in the operation. Weather became the invisible enemy. In late August, Australian winter struck Mount Buffalo with nighttime temperatures dropping to 5 degrees below zero. Fog enveloped the plateau for entire days, reducing visibility to meters. Snow began falling, covering hypothetical tracks, freezing equipment, hindering aerial operations. The conditions that were adverse for police could be allies for Freeman. While officers rotated in shifts, retreating to heated accommodations in Bright and Porepunkah to recover from exposure, Freeman, if he was still alive, had nowhere to retreat. He was exposed to the same brutal elements 24 hours a day. As days turned into weeks, frustration became palpable. Interviewed officers admitted Freeman was more at home in that terrain than they were. It was a humbling admission. Hundreds of highly trained professionals, equipped with millions of dollars in technology, were being outmaneuvered by a middle-aged man with no formal credentials. Search and rescue experts like Michael Coates explained the obvious. If a person is in a cave, rocky ledge, or mining tunnel with no visible presence to the sky, they remain unrecognizable to thermal imaging. The technology, so reliable in open fields where humans are the hottest objects in frame, became useless against layers of granite that absorbed, reflected, and confused heat signatures. The psychological toll on the operation was mounting. Officers were working 12-hour shifts in treacherous conditions, climbing steep slopes with heavy gear, navigating terrain where a single misstep could mean a broken ankle or worse. The Special Operations Group, Australia's most elite tactical unit, found themselves reduced to glorified hikers, prodding caves with sticks, calling out into darkness, hoping for a response that never came. It wasn't what they had trained for. It wasn't the high-speed tactical scenario they had rehearsed hundreds of times. It was grunt work, exhausting, demoralizing grunt work. The funerals of Thompson and DeWart Hoddart were held at Victoria Police Academy in Glen Waverley on September 5th and 8th. More than 1,000 people attended each service, including Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, Victorian Premier Jacinta Allen, and Chief Commissioner Mike Bush. Thompson's casket was draped with the Victoria Police flag. DeWart Hoddart's family had flown in from Belgium, faces etched with incomprehensible grief. Bagpipes played. Officers stood at attention, tears streaming down faces. Monuments across the country lit blue. A moment of silence was observed in the federal parliament. Flags flew at half-mast across Victoria. The nation mourned in the formal, structured way democracies mourn their fallen. But while the nation mourned, Freeman remained invisible. The contrast was brutal. 2 lives extinguished in an instant, honored with full state ceremony, while the person responsible still breathed free air under open sky somewhere in that mountain, or didn't breathe anymore. Nobody knew. And that uncertainty was, in some ways, worse than confirmation of escape. If Freeman was alive and free, he had won. If he was dead, natural causes had delivered justice before the state could. Either way, Victoria Police had failed. By late September, the search reached an inflection point. Victoria Police announced the creation of Task Force Summit, a specialized group that would take leadership of the operation. Led by a detective inspector from the Anti-Gangs Division, a unit more accustomed to motorcycle club warfare and organized crime, the team included detectives from Crime Command, resources from Fugitive Squad, Armed Crime Squad, Special Operations Group, Search and Rescue Squad, and local remotely piloted aircraft systems members. The force was reconfigured, reduced from 400 to 200 officers. Not for lack of commitment, but tactical recognition. An indefinite operation of that magnitude was unsustainable. Officers were being pulled from investigations across the state. Budgets were hemorrhaging. Public patience, while sympathetic, had limits. Mount Buffalo National Park reopened to the public in October. The decision was strategic, but also pragmatic. Keeping 31,000 hectares of public land closed indefinitely would cripple the regional tourism economy. Towns like Bright depended on visitors coming to hike, ski, climb. But the reopening also served another purpose. It turned thousands of hikers and tourists into potential eyes on the ground. Someone eventually might stumble across something, a campsite, a body, a clue. It was crowdsourced investigation by default. 2 prevailing theories existed among investigators, though neither was voiced publicly. First, Freeman had died. Hypothermia, fall, dehydration, self-inflicted gunshot wounds, infection from the leg wound he might have sustained. His body lay in some remote corner of the park, wedged in a crevice or buried under rockfall, waiting to be discovered by hikers or the passage of time. This theory was comforting. It meant Freeman hadn't outsmarted the entire Victoria Police Force. Nature had just been faster. Second, Freeman had escaped the initial cordon and vanished into the network of surrounding rural towns, taking refuge in remote properties or crossing state borders. Perhaps sympathizers within the sovereign citizen community had sheltered him. Perhaps he had walked out at night, changed clothes, shaved his beard, and disappeared into suburban anonymity. This theory was terrifying. It meant he could be anywhere, watching news coverage of his own manhunt from a safe house, planning his next move, living free while Thompson and DeWart Hoddart moldered in graves. But neither theory held completely. No corpses, no verifiable sightings outside the area, no financial activity, no electronic footprint. Freeman had entered the park on August 26th and never left, at least not under human or mechanical surveillance. He had simply disintegrated into the landscape like morning mist burning off in sun. On September 12th, Tactical teams had tracked a specific area of 0.886 square kilometers, searching for an active armed aggressor. The search was aggressive, urgent, loud. Helicopters overhead, dogs barking, officers calling commands. The assumption was Freeman was hiding, armed, dangerous, ready to shoot anyone who came close. In December, they returned to the same zone, this time searching for a corpse. The search was methodical, quiet, somber. New South Wales cadaver dogs were brought in again, animals trained to detect the scent of decomposition, the chemical signature of death itself. Teams conducted line searches for 5 days, clearing caves, tracking thick and rugged terrain, prodding under fallen logs, checking abandoned mining shafts. Result, nothing. No clothing, no weapons, no remains, no signs of life or death. Freeman had become less than a ghost. He had become a question mark. Assistant Commissioner Martin O'Brien issued a statement summarizing institutional helplessness. The devastating loss of Neil and Vadim has struck at the heart of Victoria Police and had an enormous impact on the Porepunkah community. I reaffirm to the community that Victoria Police remains committed to doing everything we can, using every available resource and necessary capabilities to locate Desmond Freeman. It was the kind of statement officials make when they have nothing else to say. Commitment without results is just noise, but commitment wasn't enough. The $1 million reward had produced no results. Calls to Crime Stoppers Victoria had generated hundreds of tips, each one investigated, each one leading nowhere. The Porepunkah community lived in fear, a fear that morphed over time from acute terror to chronic unease. Schools had initially closed, then reopened with police presence. Families stayed indoors after nightfall in those first weeks, but eventually life resumed its rhythms. You can't live in panic forever, but doors stayed locked. Cameras were installed. Every shadow was Freeman. Every sound in the forest was a threat. Terror didn't stem from what Freeman was doing. It stemmed from nobody knowing where he was, or if he was even capable of doing anything anymore. The true breaking point wasn't an event, it was a revelation. As months passed without trace, the search began exposing an uncomfortable truth about modern reliance on technology. It isn't infallible. It is, in fact, predictably vulnerable. Drones, thermals, helicopters, tools designed to find people in open fields and deserts, on flat terrain. But Mount Buffalo is none of those places. It's a natural granite fortress, sculpted over millions of years by erosion, with deep cavities, labyrinthine crevices, and tunnels excavated by desperate gold seekers more than a century ago. Each of these features is a blind spot for thermal technology. Granite retains and releases heat slowly, creating false signatures. Tunnels are invisible from above. Caves have no windows to the sky, and Freeman knew this. While drones flew in algorithmic search patterns, Freeman was underground. While helicopters swept with infrared, Freeman was surrounded by rock blocking his body heat. While dogs tracked, Freeman had gone weeks without moving, allowing his scent to fade into the ecosystem. Police were playing a 21st century game. Freeman was playing a 19th century game, and he was winning. The comparison with Malcolm Naden is inevitable. Naden, the fugitive who evaded police for 7 years in New South Wales, was also a bushcraft master. Naden hunted kangaroos for food, stole from isolated cabins to resupply, and lived in natural shelters. New South Wales police described him as a master bushman. Naden was finally captured in 2012, not by technology, but by patience. A tactical team ambushed him at a dilapidated cabin at night. But Freeman had an advantage Naden didn't. Naden fled with days of head start before massive search began. Freeman fled immediately after the shooting, but into terrain he knew intimately. He wasn't learning on the go. He had rehearsed this for decades. By late 2025, the police search had consumed resources equivalent to a small armed conflict. The operation had involved more officers, more technology, and more money than any other in Australian history. And it had produced nothing. No body, no capture, not even a confirmed sighting. The breaking point wasn't dramatic, it was silent. It was the slow acceptance that perhaps Freeman had accomplished something the modern era considered impossible, disappearing completely. Police began publicly discussing the possibility that Freeman was dead, not because they had evidence, but because it was the only explanation that didn't imply humiliating defeat. If Freeman was alive and free, it meant a 56-year-old man, armed only with terrain knowledge and iron will, had defeated the country's most advanced police apparatus. Media began calling him the Ghost of Mount Buffalo. The nickname wasn't flattering. It was involuntary acknowledgement of helplessness. More than 105 days after the shootings, Desmond Freeman remains missing. The search continues, but transformed. It's no longer a manhunt, it's a vigil. Task Force Summit maintains an enhanced presence in Porepunkah and Mount Buffalo, responding to leads, tracking intelligence, waiting for nature or time to reveal what technology couldn't find. The consequences extend beyond an unsolved case. The failure to capture Freeman has exposed fundamental cracks in modern policing doctrine. For decades, law enforcement in developed countries has invested trillions in surveillance technology. Drones, satellites, facial recognition, interconnected databases. The narrative was clear: you can't hide. But Freeman proved you can if you know how. Excessive reliance on technological tools has created a critical skills gap. Modern officers are trained in sophisticated equipment use, but not necessarily in primitive tracking, bush survival, or natural terrain reading. Freeman, without formal education, without military training, without modern resources, outperformed hundreds of professionals precisely because his skills predated the digital era. The case has also reignited debate about the sovereign citizen movement in Australia. Freeman isn't the first adherent of this ideology to violently confront the state. In 2022, the Wieambilla shootings in Queensland, where 2 police officers and a civilian were murdered by adherents to anti-government conspiracy theories, marked a prior escalation. But Freeman took the conflict to a new level. He didn't just attack, he disappeared. And in doing so, became an involuntary symbol for a movement that despises state authority. The $1 million reward remains in effect. The Porepunkah community remains on alert. Hikers visiting Mount Buffalo are warned to report anything unusual. But the park has returned to tourist normalcy. Families camp at Lake Katani, climbers ascend the gorge's granite walls, cross-country skiers traverse Cresta Valley in winter. Life continues, but with a persistent shadow. For the families of Neil Thompson and Vadim Dewart Hoddart, there is no closure. Thompson, 1 week from retirement after 38 years of service, will never enjoy the retirement he had earned. Dewart Hoddart, polyglot and rising in his career, will never realize the potential he carried. Their deaths weren't abstract, they were personal, and the man responsible still hasn't paid for them, at least not before human justice. The legacy of the Freeman case isn't just an unsolved mystery, it's a brutal lesson about the limits of control. Technology has given us extraordinary tools. It has allowed us to see in darkness, track from space, coordinate military-scale operations. But it hasn't made us omnipotent. Nature, in its most primitive form, still has secrets. And some men, prepared by decades of obsession and distrust, know how to exploit them. Mount Buffalo stands tall, imposing, and indifferent. Its 300-meter cliffs, its hidden caves, its forgotten tunnels. There, somewhere between granite and sky, lies the answer. Perhaps Freeman is dead, frozen in a crevice that will never be discovered. Perhaps he's alive, moving at night, hunting silently, waiting. Or perhaps, and this is the most unsettling possibility, he simply dissolved into the landscape he loved, becoming part of the mountain that protected him. What is indisputable is this. On August 26, 2025, 2 police officers died and a man disappeared. And in the clash between machine and mountain, the mountain won.